إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمد عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Today, inshallah, we'll begin the first reading of a new book that we're studying, which is شرح الدروس المهمة لعامة الأمة, an explanation of the important lessons for the lay folk of this ummah. And it's a book originally written by Shaykh Al-Allāmah Abdul Bin Baaz, رحمه, and explained by Shaykh al-Madinah Abdur-Razzāq Al Badr. And it's a book that talks about the basics of Islam that every Muslim needs to know, and that every Muslim and Ammi, a layman, must know regarding the Aqidah, the beliefs, the ibadat. It comes to prayer, zakat, siyam, etc. And it's a book written, as we mentioned last week, that the Shaykh Bin Baaz wrote the book with the audience of the layman in line, meaning the layman who doesn't need to know too much beyond the basics. And it's a book is very excellent in the way it's organized and simple in its wording, and the explanation adds to what Shaykh Bin Baaz mentioned. So we'll begin today and we'll continue with this book from the following weeks. المقدمة قال الشيخ عبد بن باز رحمه الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين وصلى الله والسلام على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. وبعد، فهذه كلمات موجزة في بيان بعد ما يجب أن يعرفه عامة من دين الإسلام، سميتها دروس مهمة لعامة الأمة، وأسأل الله أن ينفع بها المسلمين وأن يتقبلها مني إنه جواد كريم. The Shaykh Bin Baaz begins in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. Then the final consequence and result is in favor of those who are muttaqeen, those who have piety. And may peace and blessings be upon the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah's messenger and servant, and upon his family and his companions altogether. As what follow, these are some summarized words in regards to the explanation and clarification of what is obligatory on every layman to know in regards to the religion of Islam. And I've called this book the important message for the layman of the Ummah. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit the listeners' diet and that He accept this from me. Verily He is Jawad. He is all generous, Al-Kareem, all honorable. And explaining it, Shaykh Abdur-Razzāq Al Badr says, حفظه, هذه مقدمة بين يدي هذه الرسالة استدل لها رحمه الله بحمد الله الثناء عليه جل في علاه. He says in the introduction here, what's between us, God means between our hands here, this treatise begins by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and glorifying Him. And also those of His people, means those who follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's religion. وبيان أن عاقبة حميدة والنائل الكريمة في الدنيا والآخرة لأهل التقوى. And that the final consequence and the final ending for those in the dunya and the hereafter is called the people of taqwa. Allah says in the Quran, right? The final consequence, the final result, the final decision will always be in favor of the believers. Whether or not we're not able to see it right now, the future is for the believers. Otherwise, وهم الملازمون لطاعة الله والمجامعون لمعصيه المؤتمرون بأوامره ومنتهون عن المواهيه عاملون من ليل رضاه والفوز بكرامته تبارك وتعالى يوم العقاب. And he says those people of taqwa are those who hold tightly to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and are far away from disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They order and they follow the orders of Allah, and they remove and they prohibit that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited, acting upon this in order to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and fawz, victory and success by His honor. Tabarak wa ta'ala, may Allah be exalted on the day that we need Him. And then Shaykh Bin Baaz, he sends peace and blessings upon the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasul Mujtaba, we're chosen path والنبي المصطفى خيارة الله تبارك وتعالى من خلقه وصفية عباده. He says here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has chosen His Prophet, and He is the one who is selected, and all the best of blessings and peace be upon Him. And then he says here that the Shaykh, he mentions that these words, means the book in our hands, is mujizatun. It's something that's abridged and very short. Shaykh Abdur-Razzāq, he said, it means ليس فيها طول مميت ولا اختصار مخيب. It doesn't have such life that it is one that bores, nor is it so short that it does not satisfy. But فيها إيجاز, whether it's short, وسهولة عبارة, والاقتصار على ما يحق المقصود بإذن الله تبارك وتعالى. And he says here that the book is summarized and easy in its expressions, summarized in order to attain that which is intended. And the Shaykh says, في بيان بعد ما يجب أن يعرفه العامة أي من واجبات الدين وضرورياته ولا سيما ما لا يقدر المرء بجهره مع بعض مسائل هي من مستحبات وليس بفرائض لكنها من الأمور المهمة التي ينبغي على عامة الأمة أن يعلو بها. And the Shaykh Bin Baaz رحمه said that this book, he has clarified that which is obligatory on every layman to know. Shaykh Abdur-Razzāq says, حفظه, what it means is that which is obligation upon the layman, and what's considered from dururiyat, necessities. Because in Islam there are different types of knowledge. That which is considered ilm al-dururi, what is necessary. Every Muslim needs to know. Amongst the most important, that be aqidah. Every Muslim needs to know the aqidah, the correct beliefs. And these are subjects where you cannot say, and it's not a law for a Muslim to say, I do not know. And then connected to that is the things like salah, and siyam, and hajj, and umrah, when those become derogatory on someone, or zakat when it becomes victory on someone, or fast in Ramadan, etc. You have to know that. The Muslim must know them, especially when they're from the 5 pillars of Islam. And he says specifically because these are things where it's not excuse to be ignorant about. However, there are some issues, he says also, in Islam which are considered mustahabbat, recommendations, which are not obligation. However, in this book, the Shaykh has only mentioned the affairs which are necessary for every Muslim to know and to have concern with. السماعة, the Shaykh, he called the book الدروس المهمة لعامة الأمة, the important lessons for the layman of the Ummah. وهو اسم مطابق للمسمى وعنوان موافق للمعنى. He said the book is in direct application of what it's called, and its title is in accordance to its meaning. الذي اشتمل عليه هذه الرسالة فهو رتبت ترتيبا بديعا على هيئة الدروس الدرس الأول ثم الثالث ثم الثالث إلى آخره. And the book is written in a way that is organized in simplicity. And it starts with first lesson, then second lesson, then third to the end. So because it's written for beginners. And each lesson, the Shaykh Bin Baaz focuses on one topic, starts with Tawheed, then he goes to next until he teaches you that which you have to know. So the Shaykh says, Muhimma, why is it called important? It's because it means التي في غاية الأهمية. Because he chose here the utmost of importance, مما يحتاج إليه عوام المسلمين, which all the laymen Muslim need to know. And then he says here that this text itself, it begins and has connected to it subjects such as the i'tiqad, beliefs, وما يتعلق بجانب العبادات, and what is connected to the actions of and worship, and what I see المباني خمسة الإسلام, especially the 5 pillars of Islam, وبين فيها أيضا الأخلاق التي ينبغي أن يتحلى به المسلم. As well, Shaykh Bin Baaz رحمه has mentioned characteristics that must for a Muslim to have, وحذر فيها من الكبائر الذنوب, now he's warning against some of the major sins, وعدد جملة منها, and he has numbered and enumerated some of those major sins. وحذر أشد تحذير من شرك أكبر ناقض للدين الربايل لله. He says, and he also warned severely against shirk akbar, major shirk which nullifies Islam. And it's important because these are the things that the Shaykh wants every layman to know. And we all know shirk is from the major sins. In the shirk al-azim al-azim, Allah says, shirk is from the greatest of oppressions, the great oppression. And then he says, فهي رسالة حوت المضامين عظيمة مهمة تمس حاجب أوان تمسي إليها. It says a book that has a great benefits, but something is important and it's a need for all the laymen to have. And then Shaykh makes dua, Shaykh Bin Baaz Allah, and he makes a dua, and Shaykh Abdur-Razzāq says this dua is azima, a great dua, which in there he's combined asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit the Muslim by the book, and he Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts it with the qabul Hassan, yet a good acceptance. And then he says, من قبل الله سبحانه وتعالى ومنه أن هذه الرسالة لاقت قبولا واسعا. Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq says, from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala And from his papers is that this Risala, الدروس المهمة لعامة الأمة, has been accepted greatly and has been sat in the sittings of knowledge had been established, many of them, in order to teach from this book. وقرأت على كثير من الناس في المساجد, and many of the people in the masajid, this book has been read to them and has been explained to them, and has been taken as a curriculum to teach the layman in order to teach them and indoctrinate them about the basics of their religion, and has been translated into many languages. I mentioned before, this book is found online in English for everyone to read. Important lesson in Ummah, it's online, it's English, also in other languages. وهذا كله من أمارات على قبول. And these are all proofs, the Shaykh said, and signs that this book has been accepted. Inshallah, by Allah's will, الذي جعل الله سبحانه وتعالى لهذه الرسالة. And then Shaykh mentions here that Shaykh ended his introduction with dua, as which is a characteristic of most of the authors, and that he hopes that this book will be accepted and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answer all dua. And the Shaykh in the beginning, Shaykh Bin Baaz, the first lesson, الدرس الأول, سورة الفاتحة وقصار السور. First lesson, سورة الفاتحة لشورت سورة. قال الشيخ بن باز رحمه الله: الدرس الأول سورة الفاتحة لقصار السور. سورة الفاتحة وما أمكن من قصار السور من سورة الزلزال لسورة الناس ترقيلا وتصحيحا للقراءة وتحفيلا وشرحا لما يجب فهمه. First lesson he says is that we must know Surah Al-Fatiha and also the short surahs in the Quran. He says Surah Al-Fatiha, something we should know as whoever is capable of knowing it, along with other short surahs, up until Surah Al-Zilzal. And how do you should learn this? Is tarqiran, and also to tasheeh al-qira'ah. So first you must get the correct recitation of these short surah. Then you must correct your recitation. Then you memorize them, and then you learn the explanation of them. So 4 ways that you learn these surah. And we're going to explain the one line the Shaykh Abdur-Razzāq goes to. First, tarqiran. Qaadir, what he means is the reciter you listen to, or the Qaadir first recites to you. Right? You listen to him carefully how it's being recited. Then tasheeh al-qira'ah, that you return it back to the Shaykh, read it back to him to make sure that it's upright, because you don't have any mistakes. Then after that, tahfeel, memorizing. And then last step, you get an explanation of those surahs memorized according to your understanding. So Shaykh says the first lesson here is الدروس المهمة, begins with this, teaching people Fatiha until the end of short surahs. ويقترح الشيخ رحمه الله يكون تعليل لقصار السور من سورة الزلزال لسورة الناس. Shaykh Bin Baaz رحمه الله decided, based on his suggestion, that every layman must know from Surah Al-Fatiha to the Surah Al-Zilzal. His opinion is wajib on every layman. وأن هذا قدر كافٍ عوان يؤدي بها الصلاتين. And the reason why Shaykh Bin Baaz suggested this is because this is enough of the Quran that a layman can actually lead his and pray his prayers with. فرضها ونفلها, to pray the obligatory prayers and the voluntary prayers. You have to be guided قيام الليل, whether it be light prayer, حتى لو كرر السورة الواحدة مقتصرا عليها في قيام الليل. Even if someone were to just read one of these surah again and again, repetitively, in light prayer, would they accept it? Because it's been reported from Qaadir bin Nu'man رضي الله تعالى عنه قال: إلا رجلا قام في زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقرأ في السحر قل هو الله أحد لا يزيد عليها. فلما أصبحنا أتى رجل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فذكر ذلك له، وكان رجل يتقلها. فقال الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم: والذي نفسي بيده إنها تعبد ثلث القرآن. Hadith Bukhari Muslim. He says that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, who used to be a man in the time of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, who used to read every Fajr قل هو الله أحد, and did not used to increase upon this. And when it became the Fajr time, on the morning time, the companions, or one of them, went to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم to mention to him what this man was doing. So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he came to ask the man about it, and the Prophet told them that this, by the one in whose hand my soul is, this surah, Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Ikhlas, is equal to 1/3 of the Quran. So the Shaykh says here then, وهذه منهجية في تعليمي. This is a curriculum for teaching. Means that you encourage the layman and to study the Quran, memorize it. And we say here, إن قدر الذي يحتاج إليه هو الذي قدر من سور. And this level of knowledge of the Quran is sufficient for him that he learns. من زلزال إلى الناس. From سورة الناس إلى الزلزال. فيشعر أن قدر الذي يحتاجه لإقامة عبادته هو الذي قدر اليسير. And now we learn that the amount of Quran that's necessary for a person to establish his Abdul worship is actually a very small amount of the Quran. فتعلمه عنايته بهذه السور. So now it becomes increased the concern for these surah. من حيث حفظ, in terms of memorizing them. ومن حيث فهم, in terms of understanding them, their meanings. حتى تكون تلاوته لهذه السور من فهم بمعانيها ودراية مدلولها. So that a person will then be able to recite these surah with understanding its meaning and studying their evidences. ولهذا لأن خصص في المساجد حلقا لعوام المسلمين يقتصر فيها على هذه السور. He said, if circles of knowledge were established in the masajid to teach the layman just these surah and to make them memorize it, ومن أكملها يقال له أكملت ما تحتاج إليه. Such that if someone were to sit in these circles and he finishes from Nas to Zilzal, then his teacher can tell him that you've completed the Quran, you completed that which you needed the Quran, you don't need to continue. You don't need more than that. Means that's sufficient for you as an obligation. And the Sheikh's giving us an idea to teach the awam. We sit together and make critical dhikr, circles of knowledge, where we call the awam to come. We teach them from Fatiha to Zilzal, then you go. That's enough, all you need. That's wajib on you. Go on, do your worship. If you need more, you need more. And we have to mention upon you, is it wajib to know up to that much? This is the opinion of Shaykh Bin Baaz, rahimahullah. But what's wajib, remember mentioned that Ibn Hazm mentioned in Muhalla, what's wajib, you have to know Surah Fatiha. Bidri. Nas, you have to know at least Fatiha. That's wajib. And Hazm mentioned in Muhalla because Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he told us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't accept our salah except with Fatiha Kitab. Last salah, liman lam yaqra Fatiha Kitab. So the Hadith said this evidence in Bukhari is evidence that anyone who is able to memorize Fatiha, that means one who is not old and one who is not able to memorize, wajib, you have to know that much of the Quran. And everything beyond that is mustahab. Or Shaykh Bin Baaz said up from Fatiha until Zilzal, so a person can have some more to leave in the Quran. So we mentioned here, this is a why, but according to Sheikh's suggestion. But still, his point is that layman should know this much. And there were circles that are established like this, and this is what's important. And a person wants to increase, the Sheikh says, in memorizing the Quran, in terms of getting more, perfecting his station, learning more of the memorizing the Quran. This is something that's kamil. It's more complete. And sometimes he said might take, just to finish this surah, it might take you just 1 month or 2 months to finish Zilzal to Nas for learning. According to the knowledge the person needs and his memorization. And this is a methodology that's important because it makes the layman understand that sitting to memorize the Quran is something that's recommended, something desired. لَيْسَ قَدْرٍ كَبِيرًا. He doesn't need to know so much. وَإِنَّمَا هِيَ سُورَةٌ قَلِيلَةٌ. It's a very small amount of surah as possible. بِإِذْنِ that a person will be able to memorize all this in a short amount of time. Now the Shaykh says, what are the ways the Shaykh Bin Baaz teaches us, or he suggests that we teach the people? First step, you have to have talqeen. Talqeen, Shaykh says, يلقنهم الإمام المقرئ أو حافظ هذه السورة آية آية فيكرر على مسامعهم آية أولى مرة ومرتين ثم ثانية وهكذا. He says the first step is called talqeen, which you have the Imam al-Muqri', the one reciting, or the half of the Quran. He comes and he recites the surah from memory, ayah by ayah. He repeats it once or twice until it ends the surah. So the person is learning it, he's hearing it, and he sees how it's being recited, one by one, until he heard it correctly. Then, after that, after hearing it correctly, he moves to the second part, which is يقوم الإمام, that is established for the Imam al-Muqri' al-Muhaffid بتصحيح قراءتهن. And now the person, after hearing it correctly, he does tasheeh al-qira'ah. He recites back to the Shaykh or the Qādir and he corrects his recitation. Means the way he's reciting it. So he recites it and he recites it back. If it's incorrect, he corrects him. Then the third step, ثم تلي بعد ذلك مرحلة الثالثة, the third level, which is memorizing it. Then you memorize that surah in front of the Shaykh or in front of the Muqri', according to a correct memorization, repeating that which is necessary to repeat. And some people, they need to sometimes repeat a surah, Shaykh says 50 times, or some will need to memorize or repeat 100 times, or some will need to repeat 200 times, according to everyone's ability, in order to make the hibd and mutqinan, to make it perfect. Then the fourth stage, which is sharh lima yajib fahmuh, to explain that which is necessary to explain according to a person's understanding from the meanings of the surah, and explaining the evidences by it, and explaining it first, the beginning of Surah Al-Fatiha, until then from Surah Zilzal until Nas. وإتمام الفائدة وعلة في تعريف يسير. Now Shaykh Abdur-Razzāq says, in order to increase the benefit of the Shaykh's book, I will explain, he says, Surah Fatiha until Zilzal. So the Shaykh begins by doing a little bit of tafsir, right, of these surah, in order to prove, or to do what the Shaykh mentioned, Shaykh Bin Baaz, to explain it for the beginner. So what we mentioned in the first part of the lesson is that every Muslim must know that much. And if we're sitting here, we don't know Nas or Fatiha to Zilzal, then it's incredible for us to memorize that much. Most people, they already know this. But we're talking to those people who are aram too, who might not know anything in the deen. How do we make them understand, or how do we make them learn or benefit from the Quran? We don't tell them they have to go memorize the Quran. Because some people, they say, well, that's difficult, especially if they're old. And the Sahaba used to seek knowledge even when they're old age. As Bukhari mentioned, some used to seek knowledge in their old age when they came to Islam. But today, the people's ambition is low. People don't want to memorize or maybe not be able to believe that they can memorize so much. So what we tell them, what you need to know is from Fatiha to Zilzal. Even family members who might not know much of D, we encourage them, we pressure them if we can, you learn this much. If you don't that much, you did a good job. And the point is, if they can't learn that much, at least we say that is fit Fatiha. You tell Muslim knows correctly, then explain it. Because Fatiha, Shaykh Bin Baaz has most of the great for needs, right? And the surah, because it is on the surahs, that is considered the best of surahs in the Quran. And it's when that connects, it explains it. And also what the Shaykh mentions here, in terms of the pain and then taskhih, etc., these are the ways to memorize and learn. Right? And that's also encouraged for us when we're memorizing the Quran. We first begin listening to the surah, and then we begin with correcting our stations and memorizing. And then if we can explain it or get it explained for us, even better. And this is encouraging in general. And this is something that's for us, even here in these times, might be something that we begin with as well. Then he begins with the Fatiha. We'll do this part, inshallah. Where he begins with the Fatiha. We'll do some parts that we'll continue next week, where he says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. He says استعاذة للشرع الاتيان بها في كل مرة يتلو فيها المسلم كتاب الله تبارك وتعالى. So first we begin أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, which in English means to seek refuge in Allah from shaitan, the curse. And the Shaykh says, Abdul-Razzāq, he says that it's legislated to reach the isti'ādah, seeking refuge, every time someone opens or someone begins recitation of the Quran. And the point he says the isti'ādah, what it means is iltijā'u ila Allah, seeking refuge towards Allah, wa talaba minhu tabarak wa ta'ala yu'īdhu abduh, and seeking that servant seeking from Allah that he protect him, the servant, wa an yuqiyahu, and give him protection and shield from shaitan al-rajī, shaitan the curse. So it's returning back to Allah, seeking his refuge from the harms of shaitan. And that means in dunya and akhirah, as Ibn Kathir mentioned, whether it be harms of shaitan in the dunya or the akhirah. And isti'ādah is rather to recite every part, every time we open the Quran. The correct opinion is, whenever we begin the Quran, we begin with isti'ādah. And majority of ulama, the tafsir, they mention isti'ādah is mustahab, laysa wajibah. Sad wajib, mustahab. Even though the ayah says, قُرْئَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ, we begin reciting the Quran, Allah says, seek refuge in Allah from the shaitan, their curse. Majority of ulama mentions is mustahab, not wajib. So if we just open the Quran and start in any ayah, it's not nothing wrong with that, but it's not recommended. Recommended to say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, because shaitan doesn't want and doesn't remain with someone who says that when he's reciting the Quran. But it's not wajib. The only ulama from those in the past who said it, well, as from the Salaf, Al-Ata ibn Rabah, Rahimahullah, Ata took the opinion it's wajib to isti'ādah, right? But the majority scholars didn't agree to him with that. And then Shaykh says after the isti'ādah, he begins with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. But Shaykh says here, وإنما شرع الاستعاذة بين يدي تلاوة كتاب الله. Why do we say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم when we begin reciting the book of Allah? لأن الشيطان أشد ما يكون حرصا على السلف العبد عن هذه الكتاب العظيم والفوز بهدايته والموقوف على معانيه. The reason why we say is because shaitan, he's very eager in turning a servant away from the book of Allah, this great book, and from the guidance of success or successive guidance, and by establishing its meaning and its effect. Therefore, it's legislated for a servant that he seek refuge from shaitan حتى تكون قراءة الكتاب تبارك وتعالى قراءة سالمة من وسواس الشيطان وهمزه ونفقه محفوظ بحفظه. He says so that as a person may be protected from shaitan's satanic whispers, from hamzihi, his poetry, his anger, and that we protected from it. And Allah tells in the Quran we should seek refuge anyway. Allah said in Surah Al-Mu'minun we should seek refuge from Allah من همزات الشياطين. الهمزات الشياطين, the anger and the waswas and distraction and the whispers of shayateen. And it's important because if we notice when you read the Quran, it might happen that someone's reading the Quran and you don't memorize very much or you cannot focus because you didn't say A'udhu Billahi Min. And you get distracted, you get mixed up, or you get interrupted. But the point is you still say it because we seek refuge from Him, and Allah recommended in the Quran that we do that. So that's what the Shaykh mentioned, because the Quran has great benefit, where the shaitan does not want us to read it. And then he says, shaitan, what does it mean? Or who is this? He says, Ayati, al-Ghawi, al-Mughwi, li-ibadillah, as-sabi lahum alayhi ta'atillah tabarak ta'ala. Shaitan is the one who is al-Ghawi, the one who follows his desires, who tries to misguide the servants from way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his obedience. And this is the name of Iblis, shaitan. And it means the one who's far from Allah's mercy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called him shaitan because he's far from Allah's mercy. فَخْرُجْ إِنَّكَ الرَّجِيمُ, Allah mentioned later on, move out of Al-Jannah, move away from you, you're accursed. But shaitan means one shaitana, the one who's far from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's him, Iblis. And he follows his desires, is the one who is misguided. Rajim and Natrud, Rajim is one who is far removed. Man'un, he's cursed. Alladhi ab'aduhu Allah, is when Allah is far removed min rahmatihi, from his mercy. وَلَمَّا كَانَ, and when someone like this is far away from the mercy of Allah, أَرَادَ يُعْبِدَ عِبَادِ اللَّهِ عنها, that he wants them, the servants of Allah, that they do not worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَطُلِبَ مِنَ الْعَبْدِ أَنْ يَسْتَعِيدَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذِهِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Therefore, it's a must that the servant, they seek refuge from Allah, from shaitan, al-aati, the one who is disobedient, the one who is far removed, الذي يعمل على صرف الإنسان عن طاعة الله وعبادته والفوز برحمته جل وعلا. Because he wants to disturb and distract the Muslims and remove them from the obedience of Allah and his worship and his success and from his mercy Jalla wa'ala. And that's when the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about shaitan has many plots, and one of them that he doesn't want to put the worship of Allah, he wants to put the worship himself. أَلَنْ أَعْهَدَ إِلَيْكُمْ يَا بَنِي آدَمَ لَا تَعْبُدُوا الشَّيْطَانَ. Allah said, did we not tell you, did we not take the command from you, O Bani Adam, or you don't worship shaitan? He's a clear enemy. So shaitan, he wants you to be misguided from Allah, not to be obedient to him. And in none of the ways. One of them is to worship him, or to do worship desires, or to turn away from the worship, by becoming distracted, etc. But the point is, when we say this, he's rajeen, he's far away from the mercy of Allah. And when we say it, we hope also that we move ourselves from him and that which he is upon. And then he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Basmala is called, is ayah min kitabillah, yu'ta biha baydi tilawati kulli suratin ala surat al-Bara. And it's an ayah in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It comes in every surah except for Surah Al-Tawbah, Surah Al-Bara. And Basmala means kalimatu isti'anati billah. It's a word we say in order to gain this or seek the assistance of Allah. So it's Tawheed. And ma'na means you will begin the tilawa with Basmala, ay anna man yatlu kitab Allah, that the one who recites the book of Allah, يبدأ تلاوته مستعينا بالله, that he recites the book of Allah with aid, seeking the aid of Allah. لأن الباء في بسم الله باء الاستعانة متبركا بذكر اسمه تبارك وتعالى. Because the ba in the word Bismillah is a ba that's used for meaning that seeking the assistance of Allah, as seeking his blessings or remembering him Jalla wa'ala. And that's what Shaykh al-Islam mentioned when he mentions Mashruط al-Salat. When we say Bismillah, he mentions you seeking the barak of Allah, that and the isti'anah, it's both. So that's why it's recommended Muslim when we begin to say Bismillah. Whatever we do, we seek Allah's aid and also Allah's blessings. So Allah makes it easy for us. And for foremost of that is the Kitab of Allah. Because the Quran is easy. لَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. But if we don't say Bismillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for us. And that's why it's important to start with Bismillah. And it's not only for the Quran, but Allah begins it. Especially in the Surah Al-Fatiha. And the correct opinion is Bismillah is one ayah or ayat of Surah Al-Fatiha. It is one ayat of Surah Al-Fatiha. And then there's the khilaf, whether it's which is the seventh ayah, right? And this is something that we'll mention later. And then he mentions the word Allah. Who is Allah? It's Alam Allah. It's a title of Allah. وَمَعْنَى ذُو الْأُلُوهِيَّةِ وَالْعُبُودِيَّةِ عَلَى خَلْقِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ. Allah, its meaning is the one who possesses worship and from all his creation altogether. And this definition, ذُو الْأُلُوهِيَّةِ وَالْعُبُودِيَّةِ عَلى خَلْقِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ, is what Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Abdul says in Misal Rahimah also in Ta'aleem Sibyan al-Tawheed. He mentions the same definition. That's what Allah means. وَهُوَ دَالُ عَلَى أُلُوهِيَّةِ اللَّهِ. It is evidence, the word Allah indicates the uluhiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it means awsaf al-kamal, that it gives Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the complete descriptions. وَالْعَدَمَةِ and might. وَجَلَالٍ وَبِيُوتِ الَّذِي يَسْتَحِقُّ بِهَا, that he deserves. أَنْ يُعْلَمْ وَأَنْ يُعْبَدْ وَأَنْ يُذَلَّ لَهُ وَيُخْضَعَ لَهُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves that we turn our worship towards him and that we submit ourselves to him and we humiliate ourselves for him Jalla wa'ala. وَدَالٌ, it also indicates al-ubudiyyah, that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala af'al al-abd, that this comes from the actions of the servants that are required from him, min dhul, in terms of humiliation, khudu' and submissiveness, وانكسار, and breaking our lowering ourselves to Allah, with iqbal Allah, and facing or turning ourselves toward Allah. And the name of Allah is Allah's name, Jalla wa'ala. And that's why some of the ulama, they mention, like happened on Imam al-Tabari, Allah also means al-ilah. And this is what many of the ulama tafsir also mention. Allah is his name, but some mention that ulama tafsir, Allah is al-ilah, the God, right, the deity. But if someone asks, what does the shara mean? What does legislative meaning of Allah? الألوهية والعبودية على خلق المين. That's who Allah is. The one who is deserving of worship and deserving of submission for all His creation. Then it says Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. اسمان متشققان من رحمة. Two meanings have been derived from Rahmah. Dalan, they point to Thubutillah, but they point both of them to the evidence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His existence and His being. As for Rahman, it means the one who has Rahmah wasi'a shamila. That one who has mercy that is comprehensive, encompassing. And Allah said, Jalla wa'ala, wa rahmati wasi'at kulli shay'. Allah said in Surah Al-A'raf, ayah 156, my Rahman, my mercy encompasses everything. So Rahman is more general than Rahim. Everything is under Rahman Allah. Whereas Rahim, دَلَّ عَلَى مَا قَصَّ اللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى بِأَوْلِيَائِهِ وَأَصْفِيَائِهِ. Ar-Rahim is for those who Allah SWT chose from His allied and from His chosen ones. As He says in Surah Ahzab, وَكَانَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَحِيمًا. And Allah's mercy, Allah's to the readers is Rahim. So you will stop with this for today, inshallah. And the Shaykh goes part by part in explaining Surah Fatiha. And of course, next type of lesson we do a little bit of tafsir. And the reason why the Shaykh did this is because he wanted to follow the Shaykh Bin Baaz mentioned, which is that we explain the ayat. Because after you memorize them and after you correct your station, you have to know the meaning of this surah. What is the benefit then if you read this surah with understanding? The khushu' increase in the salah. You mean salah, you know, the Fatiha means you understand and you actually have more khushu' and more concentration. And that's the goal in salah. We don't want to stand in salah with a khushu'. That's the believer who stands in salah with khushu'. But the khushu' comes from understanding the meaning. As some of the salaf and some of the Imma used to make, often someone have khushu' but doesn't know the tafsir of the ayah. Means you might know the meaning, but if you don't know what it means in terms of tafsir or its correct understanding, you will not be moved. If the eyes has a meaning that's moving, you will not be able to shed into tears because you have no idea. And if it's eye that has some type of punishment, you wouldn't be able to likewise fear the punishment because we don't know what it intends. And so by this, the Shaykh drew the fourth stage to try and explain it. And he will continue that till he finishes. Then he moves to Tawheed. From Tawheed, he goes other shit, Aqidah and Shirk, and continues all the way down to the issue of Ibadah, like Janazah and the Zakat, etc. And the book is an easy book to read, but explanation is beneficial because Shaykh Abdur-Razzāq did this, we mentioned earlier last week, in Masjid Nabawi in 12 classes, and they combined as a new book that came out. And the book is easy for us, but it's also encouraging for us that we study these things. Especially if someone to ask, as a Muslim, what do I have to know? Someone can ask, you and ourselves may ask, what is the layman supposed to know? What am I supposed to know as a student of knowledge? So you said this book teaches what you have to know. And if you know more than this, alhamdulillah. But if you know this much, you know. And if you have a friend, for example, a family who doesn't know what to learn, and what book we can advise them to, so here, read this book, study this book. Because the Shaykh Bin Baaz, rahimahullah, Shaykh Abdur-Razzāq made the introduction, Shaykh Bin Baaz had a lot of concern with this book. But he authored it, and he continued to edit it up until the year he died, rahimahullah. He edited the book until he finished editing it, and adding and taking, because Shaykh concerned a lot with this book. Because this for the awam, and listen nasiha for ammatin yat. Rasul said, din nasiha, the original nasiha, and the last category is وَلَمِتُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَعَامَّتِهِ. Right? For the leaders and the laymen. The laymen we need to teach them, but also we need to teach ourselves. And the book is also a book that is easy for us to understand. Inshallah, we'll stop with them. If anyone has any question or any point about what you mentioned, they can ask, inshallah.
Yes. Decent that way, that's good. Well, God's protection from shaitan in your dunya mira. I'm ski power.
What you seek is, we seek the refuge of Allah from the punishment or the misguidance and the harm of shaitan in our dunya and akhirah. So for the dunya means that he may ruin our property, may take from our belongings. And Rasul mentioned, for example, certain things if we have and we don't benefit from them, they are left for shaitan. He mentions Sahih Muslim, for example, firash al-rajul, one bed is for the man, or firash al-mar'a, second bedding is for your wife, or thalitha lil-dhayf, a third bed or extra bed is for the guest, or rabi' shaitan, a fourth one you don't use, you don't need for shaitan. And for example, he can benefit from your material without your permission, or take from your food without bismillah. He harms you. And physically, shaitan can also harm somebody if he wills. Like he mentioned also Sahihain, the people who didn't say bismillah, they came to try to take the food of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So what happened in that hadith, he took their hand and he actually brought them to the food. So the ulama explained that sometimes shaitan can actually go and physically harm somebody or force them to do something. Like not always he does this, but shaitan can harm us physically. So we say, I would be left from the harm in the dunya. As athra, will he put us in hellfire? Or guide us there, misguide us there. Because that's his goal to put people in hellfire. إِنَّهُ يَدْعُو, he'll say him, وَحِزْبُهُ, and his army or his tribe, they only want you and takun min ashabi sa'id. So you be from people of the hellfire. So that's why when said it, you say both harm from here and there. Especially the one in the akhirah, because in dunya, we can seek protection, but then the akhirah is more dangerous because we're misguided. Right? And Allah is trying to give us a guide highly, but shaitan cannot affect us if we are people who are sincere. إن عبادي ليس لك عليهم سلطان. My servants, you have no authority over them, إلا من تبع من الغاوي, except for those who follow their desires are overcome. So that means that if we are sincere about Tawheed and with Allah, shaitan inshallah won't have any ability over us by Allah's permission. Jazakumullah khair. And there anything else? Yes.
So when I was reading a book of Faisal of Shaykh Bin Baaz, he mentioned that it's going different on what is wajib, or what is the minimum to recite a salah. So is it only like Fatiha, or does it have to be another surah for this?
More correct, depending on Allah Alam, majority scholars say at least you have to read, you must read Fatiha. Because Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned the hadith, right, in Sahihain, La salah, there is no prayer, liman lam yaqra bi Fatiha kitab. And then another hadith of Sa'id, others they mentioned Musallih Ahmed, that you have to read Fatiha wa ma tayassar min al-Quran, what's easy for you from the Quran. So that's the second part, is what's easy for you is Sunnah. Means if you know, like, for example, if you're reading by yourself, you know Surah Al-Baqarah, you can read some ayat from there. If you're reading by yourself, all you know is that, read that. But what's wajib in order to be upright is Fatiha. As some ulama, then they mentioned that what is the khilaf came between be behind the imam or by yourself. But in terms of prayer, salah al-Fatiha, there is no way salah will be accepted like that. Behind, especially if you're praying by yourself or even behind the imam. But in terms of what's additional sunnah. So literally you can pray salah just with Fatiha, and that is a part of the sunnah, just to read Fatiha, because it's must, but not to limit yourself all times that to just read Fatiha every time. But that's what's wajib, because the hadith mentioned the one who doesn't read Fatiha, Salatul Khidaj. Why salah is invalid. So I don't know if that Birit Khatwa, you better example mentioned the khilaf, I don't know, but the majority of scholars they mention is wajib, we have to have Fatiha and everything else is sunnah. Any other questions or yes?
So being what I managed to see that they on the walk with Shaitan before we in the Quran have some scholars say that we will have.
But is it in that order? It's in that order. So scholars they agree that the order here is a recommendation, not obligation, and that's when you begin reading the Quran. So right now, if you open the Quran, you say they read. And some others mention that when you're beginning, just like you just open the Quran, you say A'udhu Billah, or just reading from memory. But not like you open the Quran and just, you say A'udhu Billah, you close it, you say A'udhu Billah again, you can. But the majority of scholars say it's not a must, wajib, that you have to do it. But Allah, when He makes the ayah, it means recommendation because of the harm of shaitan. And then here the point is that those who said it's wajib, only Ata is the one who said that, so majority have agreed it's only mustahab. Even though in the ayah it's an order, but the ulama they interpret it to mean the recommendation. And the other evidence, Rasul read the Quran and Sahaba read the Quran, but they didn't say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. They just read some ayat. And sometimes you see people make a mistake, they make istidlal, they say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. So it doesn't never make istidlal and say ista'adah. Like, for example, want to prove that point, you don't have to say, okay, Allah says, fi kitabi, ba'd A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. So never did that. You just used to mention the ayah. And for example, sometimes you read and you say Bismillah and you mention the surah. For example, the surah or the hadith when he got the revelation of Surah Al-Kawthar, Rasul he read Surah Al-Kawthar. Some versions of the hadith mentioned they didn't have A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, just Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I guess he read the surah. So the scholars use those evidence to show that the Sahaba, when they're understanding it, their practice, that they didn't see it, you have to do it. But when Allah recommended it, then the recommendation is still there. Okay, no, there's no abrogation to that. But to say you have to means anyone who doesn't do it is sinning. And there's no scholars for Ata and others, a few others said that you're sinning if you don't do it. Right, so that's what the majority of scholars. And if you go to Sharh al-Tuhfat al-Atfal, they mention these khilafat, in terms of the opinion about this ta'adat.
When the Prophet prohibited taking the Quran to non-Muslim lands, but then he used to start his letters and stuff with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In that case, was it not an ayah or?
That's why it's the Surah Fatiha or Bismillah is a ayah, but the hadith said that Rasulullah he prohibited and to safir al-Mushaf. He traveled the Mushaf to Ard al-Adu, the land of the enemy. So ulama said Mushaf is the kamil, the whole thing, because of the harm to khafa, he afraid that the non-Muslim that will get a hold of it and then humiliate it. So the ayah that he used to write from that letters is ayah of the Quran, but it's not a Mushaf entirely. And they also send them because they were kuffar and they didn't have wudu anyways, but as a da'wah to them. So the ulama they mentioned that this hadith is applicable to places where it's not safe or it's not known that there will be safety for the Mus'haf. And some scholars they say, okay, in our time we don't have to worry like how we have in our Masahif or here or in the public libraries or whatever. Look, they're here, the kuffar, they do not harm the Quran, so it's allowed to have it. What Allah said, still recommended that we don't give them Mus'haf. But Shaykh Muqbil Allah said we shouldn't still give them because of this hadith, just recite to them some ayat and something. But the ayah in the Quran, Bismillah is the ayah, and then here it says they try with the Quran, what it means by the Quran is a Mus'haf. The whole take Mus'haf. And that's what Sahaba, when they used to do da'wah, they never used to give them, much they used to recite to them. So that's why some ulama also use that that evidence to mention as proof that about the wudu issue, when you wudu or no wudu. Are there different types of how do like seeking refuge with Allah? There's different types, yeah. The type Shaykh Al-Bani mentioning those different types. أعوذ بالله اللهم إني أعوذ بك من اللهم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من همزه ونفخه ونفثه and then اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الشيطان الرجيم and then just اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الشيطان الرجيم. So there's 3 or 4 altogether. But then one Shaykh Al-Bani mentions 2 of them, and those are especially the ones in Abi Dawud من همزه ونفخه ونفثه. They used to recite in the beginning of Salah this one. So Shaykh Al-Bani mentions 3 of them, and then some scholars you find other versions they mention Allahumma in front of it. So it's in the 4, but all of them the same meaning. And Sunnah is to change it all sometimes. Sometimes you say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, or Allahumma inni or A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem min hamzihi wa nafthihi. Nowadays you don't hear that a lot. And that's actually the hadith clearly. If you look at any evidence, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to use this one. That in Salah with that one, in the hadith why they say he began Salah with that one. So some scholars maybe this is more recommended with that one, or at least that one should be used. The Shaykh Al-Bani encouraged in that books of Salah, but it's about 3 or 4 to count them. And all fine, if you use any of them, as long as you have everything, that's like the bare minimum. That's how good here. As I heard, yeah, he said this. So that's what he took from that benefit that he said this and began with that part. Yes.
So when they say to me without missiles, just handle the transmission, what did the
It's not long to handle translation. Majority of scholars they say you can. Right, that you can give them translation. Even though Shaykh Al-Bani's fatwa was a little bit unclear if it meant, he said you can give them Mus'haf, how else are they going to come to Islam? But it's not clear if it meant the Mus'haf Arabi, or they meant like translation. But the ulama that's part of da'wah. You give them Mus'haf, or you give them a pamphlet or a booklet, all from da'wah. But the Sunnah Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to be that he used to recite ayat on them, to them, so that they can listen to it and then benefit by them. Because even though they might not understand the Quran, it still can guide them. And that's how you see in the second tree of Aqaba, when he brought the Ansar, he read them ayat of Quran. And they gave him the tree. They took in the pledge. And when Ja'far went to Najashi, he went to him Surah Maryam, particularly when he came to Islam. So it's a successful technique. This is what the Rasul Sahaba used to do. But if you give the Mus'haf, and you say, and you know this person, it's just all English, you better, no, we can do that. But the best thing to do, you give them the one who wants to learn from it. If it's not serious or you're not sure, you can give them some parts of the Quran, like to tell them some parts so you can encourage them. But giving translation is fine. Majority scholars, there's nothing wrong with that, because it is type of da'wah. Especially if you don't know much like Quran, we just give them a pamphlet tape, and that's good enough as da'wah. And my famous said, as long as you know that it is a correct like book or translation or something, and I'll suggest like some of the translations here are not the most correct. You can't just take it and just give it to somebody, because it could be incorrect and you're misguiding the people. It has to be one that you know it's authentic translation. That is da'wah, or that's part of da'wah. But what's better if you can't read him? So even if he doesn't understand, or you see, you'll still listen to you. Right? And there's been we will see before that it does work. A lot of yes.
Like, what was the most common way of Allah, very bad message for Salah? Very Salah.
In simple salah is there. The one Shaykh Al-Bani uses the hadith. You can just, all you have to say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. But if you say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem min hamzihi wa nafthihi wa nafthihi, that's the one that the Sunnah Abi Dawud Sahih, that's what he used to use. But if you use this one or that one or the other ones, it's all fine. It's all from the Sunnah. And then the scholars differ. Do you do it in the first rak'ah alone or every rak'ah? Khilaf between ulama. Some scholars they say, right, you do it in the beginning, and that's good enough. And others they say no, but every rak'ah. Like in Hassan Shaykh Al-Bani, every rak'ah, because you begin the next rak'ah, you start the beats with Fatiha. Again, others say you start with the first, and the salah is one part, so you go one and it carries for the fourth. But the point is, whatever, as long as you did it, it's good. But let's say you didn't do it, just say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it's fine, but it's not Sunnah. Because Ustaadh says, Sallu kama ra'aytum usalli. Pray as you pray. Another point is,
Verse for the heart and I think washroom and exiting. Profession was to forget it while the sun washing and the saying you remember at the minute or so is permissible to say then when the saying the exit need to get in after.
But I remember some scholars Shaykh Abdur, let's say you don't have to say it. Once you miss the time, it's enough. So some they ask, how about you say inside yourselves? You missed it. You were coming in the best. You don't have to do it. Well, others said you could just remember, but I said you can still do it. But the better is if you forgot it, the entering, you just leave it. Because now you're in the washroom, you should not remember it. And then the argument also is that you have to say it before enter and while intending to enter, and it should be read out loud a little bit, or it means that it's audible. Be inside it, you forgot it, and you just read to your heart, and that's not how the Ustaadh used to do it. So if I remember Shaykh Abdur say you don't have to do it. If you forgot it, just you use the washroom and you leave. And they say if you walk out and you say, well, forgot of a Quran, if you remember on the way out, you can remember if you were a long time ago, it's okay. It's gone because its place is gone now. It's time and place. So, for example, if you're coming out and you're standing here and you say, oh, I forgot the Quranic, not in the washroom, you cannot just do it now. And that's because you missed it. But if it's in the position itself, like Bismillah in the wudu, then the ulama has different now ones. You have to say Bismillah in the wudu if you remember it. Because in that case, you're still in the wudu, you can still remember it. But in terms of the these two, they say just you missed it. That's it. There's no sin because Allah isn't held accountable for forgetting. Yes.
My question came to now. So I was watching the video between and listening to a question. It was the Christian asking a question. They basically said that Muslims believe the Quran is the word of God, and we're saying that the Muslim position is that in Bible the word of God, but it got corrupt. And he then proceeded to ask, and the Quran said the word of God cannot be corrupt. So then he asked the Muslim, how is it that the Bible got corrupted? So incorruptible. So how do you respond to someone saying that?
We say the word of Allah cannot be corrupted. So the thing is that the book that they have there that they use, they call the Bible, it's not the word of Allah. Isa alayhi salam, it didn't come with the Bible, it came with the Injil. And the Injil was written or sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Isa, not the Bible which is written after him. So what their argument is, they're trying to say that yes, the word of Allah, the Injil cannot be corrupted, but the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that what they have with them now, they're not practicing, nor is it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entirely. They added to it. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يُحَرِّفُونَ كَلِمًا مَوَاضِعِهِ. They used to begin first by making tahrif of the kalimat. Ibn Kathir mentioned tahrif means literally used to move something from something else, like change it, or in the ma'ari. So they recite it and they say it means this and this. So while the book of Allah can be tampered with, what they were doing is they were adding to which is not. So now that they had the Bible, we say first thing you have to prove is that this Bible you have is actually the Injil that Isa had. And they cannot do that. We say so the Injil cannot be corrupted, but the Bible itself is not. And that's why the Muslim has to be clear and said, we believe in the Injil, we believe what's in it. And even the corrupted version, there's still what to benefit in it, we believe in it. But to say that what you have here, the Bible is the word of Allah to begin with, this is what you have to prove. So that's the problem they assume. They're assuming that what they have is exactly what Isa had, which is not the truth. And one hadith was told one Sahabi that the Jews and the Christians, عندهم Torah wal Injil. They have the Torah and Injil. But right now, what they call Torah and Injil with them, ولا ينتفعون شيء ولا يغني عنهم شيئا. Doesn't benefit them at all. And one hadith mentioned they don't even follow not in the harf of what's in there. And they're just reciting it, nothing. They don't practice a single part of it. So for them, when they come and they say, okay, this, we say, first of all, you have to prove that this book you have, Bible, is from Isa alayhi salam. There's no isnad, it's impossible. It's impossible to prove it. And then we say, therefore, we say that Injil cannot be corrupted, but it has been added to and has been distorted, and therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed that. Because the Quran is muhaymin alayh. The Quran came as muhaymin to complete the rest of the books. So therefore, these books that came, even though let's say that there are some parts untampered, we still cannot follow the mansukh. So the person who comes to it, we say, if you go back to the Quran, you see the Quran also teaches that the Quran is the final revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It completes what came before, and it cannot be corrupted until Yawm al-Qiyam. Whereas the books Allah had, they could not be corrupted at the time period as well, but afterwards were corrupted by Allah's permission. So you see, when Isa alayhi salam, he came with the Injil, and after him, the Quran came. Before that, the Torah, as it was growing, the books were being added till Allah revealed another one. And then with the Quran, it's not going to be, because it's a miracle. To be explained to someone like this, then someone might understand. But if we tell them, no, the word of Allah cannot be corrupted, and that Bible is the word of Allah, then that means the Bible is not corrupted. And that's the false argument, yeah. Allah. And the end of the last question.
Yes, so Salah, right? Then we read from Surah Fatiha, right? After Surah Fatiha, there's no other standing. Is there Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in the surah, or when you're reading the next surah after Fatiha?
Yes.
The next surah you say, what does start you Surah Rahman ar-Rahim?
No, it's just say Bismillah, yeah. Bismillah. So the argument is when you start the next rak'ah, should you say A'udhu Billah again?
Yeah.
Or should you use the number before? So some scholars, they argue, no, you don't have to, because with the Salat began with A'udhu Billah in the first rak'ah, and that's how we learn. Well, I said, let's start بالله inshallah. Yes. The first sentence from that Basmala in Surah.
Or should you say the listener as
No, you don't do Basmala middle of Surah. Only A'udhu Billah. So Basmala is where it is in the Quran. So you start with the Mahal Surah, say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. But when you start from the middle of the Surah, you say A'udhu Billah, you continue. Ahmad Tadri said there's no, because there's no Basmala there. So now you're saying what's not there. So you say only A'udhu Billah, and then you read. And if you just read, it's also fine, but they recommend the A'udhu Billah, but no Basmala. So I'll stop with that. Subhanaka bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.